Hi everyone, I'm Shaylin here with Reedsy. Today we're going to be talking about the rising action. So the rising action is a part of a story that develops the conflict and raises the stakes. In a pretty simple story structure like Freytag's Pyramid, which we've got a video on if you want to learn more about it, the rising action is everything from the inciting incident all the way to the book's climax. So we're basically connecting the beginning to the end. No matter how complicated the structure is between these 2 points, that's what the rising action is. It connects these 2 crucial points in the story, the inciting incident, which presents the character with a goal and sets them out on a journey, and the climax of the book, which is the point the journey has led them towards where they will either succeed or fail. It is a huge and therefore important part of a story. If you're using a more complicated story structure like the hero's journey, the rising action is broken up into a bunch of smaller and more specific story beats. But we can look at the rising action kind of just like on its own. A lot of writers might not be using a more specific story structure, and in that case it is good to understand the role the rising action plays and how to write a good one, even if you're not using something like the hero's journey. So for example of what the rising action is, let's look at the Hobbit. In the inciting incident of the book, Gandalf asks the main character, Bilbo, to be the burglar on a quest to steal treasure from a dragon named Smaug. Once he agrees and sets out on this journey, the rising action begins. It leads us all the way up until the very end of the book. Along the way, he faces various obstacles, he grows as a person, he goes from kind of reluctant and a bit of a homebody and someone who prefers safety and what he knows to a hero and a leader, leading all the way up to the book's climax where they make an attempt to actually steal the treasure just as has been promised from the very beginning. So how do you write a good rising action? I will throw out here, if you want more guidance on the rising action, you can follow another plot structure. There are tons of them out there. We have tons of videos on different plot structures like Save the Cat, The Hero's Journey, the Dan Harmon plot embryo. There are tons of them out there. But if you like a bit more freedom, a bit more flexibility when you're writing, I'm like this, these are some qualities you can look for in your rising action to keep it strong and effective, even without referencing a specific story structure. So first of all is to continually introduce new information. Information needs to continually develop and change in order to keep the story interesting. If we're repeating the same information and there's not new information being introduced that's having an effect on the story and the characters, the rising action will feel very stilted or even repetitive. Step number 2 is to allow the character to fail. A character just can't succeed all the way through the rising action. Though of course they will sometimes succeed, they have to also fail as well. A rising action where the character succeeds and succeeds and succeeds and succeeds at every single obstacle they're presented with will lose stakes really quickly because it becomes clear to the reader that this character can't fail, so why should we invest? We know they're going to succeed, right? There's no tension in that. Typically, the rising action will feature a back and forth of success and failure. They'll fail at something, but then they'll succeed at something, etc., etc. If they fail over and over and over and over, the story will again lose tension and lose stakes because there's no hope. But if they succeed every single time, the same thing will happen. So you want that back and forth. When they do succeed, it should take effort, it should come at a cost, and it should challenge them some way. It shouldn't just be kind of an empty victory. You also want to challenge your character. Going into your story, the character probably has a lot of flaws that hold them back, and now it's time to challenge those flaws. Challenging them is what will allow them to undergo a character arc, for better or for worse. They're going through a positive character change where they grow and they become a better person. We're going to see them have to overcome their flaws in order to succeed as they face various obstacles, and then eventually the final obstacle at the end of the book. We're looking at a negative character arc, my favorite kind of character arc. Their successes and failures will do the opposite. It'll actually reinforce their flaws, and they'll embrace their flaws more and more until we see a version of a character who's maybe spiraled a little bit by the end. Either way, by the end of the story, we're able to see a changed version of them, and that change has been earned throughout a long series of events rather than happening kind of on a tailspin. The rising action is where you earn a character's arc, so make good use of it. You also want to build character relationships. The middle act is where you're going to focus on building character relationships. This is the time to do it, right? Whatever the core important relationships of the story are, this is the time to develop them. Just as we're going to see change in your character, we should also see change in those central relationships. And a lot of the time, these relationships are tied to your character's personal growth. And finally, you want to shift the story rather than just having obstacles. Now, it's great to have obstacles. You're going to need obstacles throughout the rising action, but they shouldn't just be hurdles the character can jump over and keep going. They should actually cause changes in the direction of the story. Good obstacles have a lasting effect on the story, meaning if you remove that obstacle, the story doesn't really work anymore. It's a crucial part of it. You don't want the obstacles in the story to just be random events the character is faced with. You want them to all build on each other and all have a deep, lasting impact on both the characters and the story. Even if the character overcomes that obstacle, it should still have an ongoing effect on the story, and we should see the consequences play out or see the effect of them succeeding play out. So that is how to write the rising action. This pairs really well with what we talked about in our last video about the midpoint, so we'll leave a link to that video as well, since the midpoint of course happens in the dead middle of the rising action, so these two things go hand in hand. I'll also leave some more videos on story structure below for you to check out. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos from us. We've got new writing, editing, and publishing tips every Tuesday and Friday. Until next time, bye.